Hi guys, hope you're doing well. Today we are going to be talking about imposter syndrome, which is really close to my heart, so I am excited to get started. What we're going to cover in the next hour is giving you an understanding of what is imposter syndrome. I feel like the words imposter syndrome gets thrown around quite a lot, but it'll be good to actually get the definition confirmed for you today. We can then look at where it comes from, who it impacts, and spoiler alert, it does tend to impact everyone. It doesn't discriminate, but there is some research around the fact that it impacts certain groups more than others. So we can look at that today. Then we can go through signs that you might be experiencing imposter syndrome. Now, what I've done here is I've created some personas that I feel like will resonate with you and help you understand whether you are experiencing imposter syndrome or others around you are experiencing imposter syndrome. We can then go into an exercise, and then we will go into actually overcoming imposter syndrome and what you can do today to start overcoming it. I will go through some practical exercises to help you. So there will be some tools that will help you along the way. And then towards the end, it'll be really good to get some feedback. If you are watching the pre-recorded version, then please feel free to comment on the YouTube video with your feedback and questions as well, and I can get back to you on that. So let's get straight into it. Well, what is imposter syndrome? So I have been looking at research reports, I've been reading books on imposter syndrome, and the reason why I've been doing that is because I have experienced imposter syndrome for quite a long period of my life. So it was really important for me to understand it so that I could, I suppose, process it and heal from it and know what to do in the future. So I've done a bit of work around this, and what I can see is that according to a person called Carrie in 2008, and backdates to the 1970s, basically a word or a phrase that is there to describe people that feel like they are not as competent as others believe. They feel like they are not as good as others tell them. It has also been referred to as imposter phenomenon. Before it was called imposter syndrome, it was called imposter phenomenon. And in certain research books that I have read, it is displayed as a mental condition, and it occurs when high achieving people attribute their success to luck rather than their hard work and talents. So if you are a person that thinks that you aren't as good as others, or if you are a person that gets a lot of compliments and doesn't believe it, and when people say, oh, you did a great job, and you then say, oh, I got lucky, or I was in the right place at the right time, chances are there is some sort of imposter syndrome there. You don't fully believe what others are telling you, what they can see. Now, the term imposter syndrome was actually coined by two psychologists called Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, and they first coined the words in 1978. So this goes back to the 70s. However, I think it's been around a lot longer than the 70s for people, psychologists, to actually coin a word for it. So, where does it come from? Now, not to get all therapy on you, but going back to our environments where we had grown up, if you were in an environment where there was extreme praise on one side and then extreme criticism on the other, chances are you might have experienced imposter syndrome from a very young age. So where you were told that things are amazing and you're doing amazing on one side of things, that could be sports or, I don't know, taking care of a sibling or whatever. And then other times or other days, you're being shouted at for doing something wrong. I'm guessing then you don't really know when you're going to be praised and when things are wrong, which then can create some confusion. You're either doing things good or you're doing things bad. And that kind of uncertainty can create imposter syndrome from a very young age. And this we can also see plays out in the workplace. So if you're in an environment where you're praised for doing great things by your manager on one hand, but then when you do things that they don't like, you're criticised for that, chances are then you could be experiencing that imposter syndrome at work as well. But I suppose we don't really know exactly where it comes from 100% because there is some ongoing research still that's happening and they're still trying to identify the sources. But from what I can read so far, that's typically the environments where we see people suffering from imposter syndrome. There was also some information around the fact that if you're in environments or you've had childhood experiences where everything's revolved around the achievement, the goal, chances are then that's bred some sort of imposter syndrome. So, for example, if you needed to do really well at football or you needed to do really well at dance or whatever it is, it doesn't matter how much effort you've put in, doesn't matter how long you've been preparing, doesn't matter what you've sacrificed. You have to either achieve that outcome or not, or you failed. Chances are, in those environments, whether they're at home and the way you've been brought up, or you're at work and it's very much results driven and no one cares about anything else, chances are then you're experiencing imposter syndrome now, or you've been brought up to be high risk as experiencing imposter syndrome. So, who does it impact? Like I said, it doesn't discriminate. Anyone and everyone can be experiencing imposter syndrome, especially if your environments growing up have been what we've said a few minutes ago. But from the research reports, there tends to be certain groups that are at higher risk of experiencing imposter syndrome, and these are underrepresented people. So if you are first generation as a professional, if we're thinking about it from a work lens, if you're first generation professional, first generation doing something that your community, the people around you haven't done before, chances are then you're at higher risk of experiencing imposter syndrome. Ethnic minorities tend to experience imposter syndrome. Women in male-dominated fields, those from low socioeconomic backgrounds tend to experience imposter syndrome. But again, it does depend on a variety of different things: upbringing, environment, and what is important. Is it the result or is it the person? But these groups tend to, we could probably say with certainty, if you are fitting in within one of these groups, chances are you have experienced imposter syndrome or you are experiencing imposter syndrome. Now, to move on to my favourite bit, which is signs that you might be experiencing imposter syndrome. What I have done here is I have put some personas together. So I took all the research that I have conducted and I thought, well, you know what, this is going to be really difficult for people to understand because there's so many different things that fall into imposter syndrome. And it feels like it's a spectrum. So it doesn't feel like there's one shoe size that fits all. So I didn't want to just list 100 different signs of experiencing imposter syndrome. What I wanted to do is just make it feel a little bit more easier to digest by creating some personas so that you have a really good understanding of what imposter syndrome can look like and whether you look like that person. So the first persona is called Devon, and just for ease, I'm just going to use she and he, him and her. But I've tried to keep the names quite gender neutral. So for ease, this person's called Devon. So her approach to work, she values achievement. She's excited and drawn to challenging tasks, and she's motivated to prove herself. She wishes to excel against any negative stereotypes. So this is a person that puts their hand up when things are going to be challenging. They're the person that you will probably look at and think they're going to end up doing this because no one else is going to want to do it. They're excited and they value achievement. They value getting some sort of achievement out of this. And this person might have negative stereotypes working against them. If this person is a cis woman in a male-dominated environment, she may want to prove herself that women can work just as hard as men, or women are just as capable. If she's an ethnic minority, there could be some kind of negative stereotypes there. If she's the only person of colour, if she's the only person from a low socioeconomic background, and whatever group or wherever she feels like she identifies, if there are any negative stereotypes there, she's really going to be motivated to make sure that people think differently of her and not think that she is the stereotype of what they might think. This person's typical limiting belief. So even though they put their hands up for these challenging tasks, inside they feel a lot of shame, fear, doubt, and that often replaces the initial mindset. So they start off really strong, put their hands up, and they're drawn and excited to these challenging tasks. But then actually what happens is they start feeling a bit of fear, they start doubting themselves, there could be some shame there as well that's playing out. So that then starts taking over their thought process. So they often predict failure. So even though they're putting their hands up to do these challenging tasks, this person is likely to predict failure. They will have negative thought patterns like, oh, I'm gonna have to tell my family or my friends or my partner that I failed. Like people at work are gonna realize that I failed. I've put my hand up for this task, but they're going to see that I'm gonna fail at this. So that kind of thought process starts playing out, and this is where the imposter syndrome starts coming into things. So, what to look out for in yourself, what to look out for in others. This person will put their hand up time and time again, but then what you might see within yourself and within others is that they avoid the tasks altogether, and they may commit, or so they'll avoid the tasks. So I don't want to do it anymore, or they may commit, but they'll be fighting themselves inside every step of the way. There'll be a lot of internal conflict going on in there. You may not see that. If you are the person that is Devon, then you'll know that, yeah, I put my hand up for these tasks. I'm getting it done. I'm getting it done to a good standard, but I'm fighting myself all the way. So if we reflect on this persona, we often, as a society, especially at work, we reward and think that someone that is motivated and loves challenging tasks has a really good work ethic. We think that person that puts their hand up for these tasks, they have an extremely good work ethic. But do we ever question how that person might be feeling inside? Does what they feel match their behaviour? So if you're working with somebody or you're managing somebody that is a Devon, that's always putting the hand up, getting the work done, but you're not sure if they're all right or not, it's probably worth checking in with them. If you are a Devon, then you definitely need to question whether you're okay, because the internal conflict with what you're initially feeling, which is excited and drawn to the challenging task, the thought process that takes over after the excitement has gone, that's not going to help you in the long run, and it is a sign of imposter syndrome. So if we look at the second persona now, so we have Matteo. Oh no, sorry, we have Noah. So Noah procrastinates. So when Noah is given a task to do, Noah procrastinates. That's his typical go-to when it comes to work that he thinks is challenging or might mean a lot to him. This procrastination is then followed by frenzied, intense work. So this person is staying up all hours of the night before the deadline to get this job done. They also may feel like, and this is the one that got me, they may also feel like they need to be over-prepared for any task in hand. Now, this definitely screams imposter syndrome, but also I see this as very common. There are a lot of people out there that will over-prepare. They will keep going through, thinking that if they don't over-prepare, it won't get done properly. So this person, this is probably one of the bigger signs of, like, if you're working with someone that's always over preparing, or if you are the person that's always over preparing, chances are that's imposter syndrome creeping in. So men suffering from imposter syndrome, they tend to procrastinate more than women. They're limiting belief. So it's fear of failure. I think the procrastination and taking time to get the job done is probably fear that they're going to fail it or it's not going to go their way. But then the deadline creeps in and then the intense work follows. Their thought process is, I've wasted so much time, now I have to prove I'm capable. So it's a last minute of, oh God, I'm going to have to get this done. I'm going to have to prove myself here and get this work done. So I'm just going to have to do this work really quickly. What to look out for in this person, they will be rewriting obsessively. They will also drop their self-care routine because they're going to try and strive towards a perfect product. If it's a cis female that you're working with and that you identify as, you're not going to procrastinate as much as a cis man. So the perfectionism might be a little bit more intense for you because you're not procrastinating as much, and dropping the self-care might be there for you a little bit more than it would be for a man because you've probably started a little bit more earlier. Whereas with men, from what I can see, they're starting probably the day before, maybe. So the self-care, dropping the self-care, it's happening for a very short window of time, but for women it might be a little bit more longer. So reflecting on this persona, this person may seem like they are cool and collected, and they may appear as if they don't need as much time as others. So the procrastination could be a little bit of an illusion. If you're working with somebody that just seems like they're going to do it tomorrow and they're not that bothered about it today, it could just be because they're procrastinating. So it looks like they're cool and collected, but really they're procrastinating. And it might look like this person doesn't take their work seriously. So everyone else is trying to do a good job here, and this person is just lounging around, not even started. So, and then they're rushing last minute, and then they're asking 100 questions, and then they're putting in urgent calls with you to try and get your 5 minutes of you, and you just think, God, this person just didn't take this seriously, or you might feel like, oh, people don't think I'm taking this seriously. So, in times like this, if you're working with someone that is a knower, it's times like this where you may, if it's a routine, and you're seeing this come up quite a bit when it comes to meaningful tasks and meaningful work. There could be an opportunity there to investigate to see if they need some extra support, because it might not be that they're cool and collected. It might not be that they're not taking work seriously. It might just be that it's the total opposite and actually they're struggling. And if you are this person, it's time to question whether the procrastination and the intense work is actually getting you to where you want to be, because it's falling right now under imposter syndrome. Then we have Tariq. Now, Tariq, her work style is intense. Like, when you're working with Tariq, she is full of anxiety and fear. These types of people tend to be exhausted after tasks, and they are flooded with relief once a task is done. But then this relief that they feel after a task is done, that's then replaced by anticipating negative feedback. So once they've put all their energy into getting that job done, they're then feeling like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to have to wait for the feedback. Did I do a good job? Am I going to get good feedback? Are people going to think highly of me? So a lot of self-doubt, a lot of anxiety, and even anxiety coming from microaggressions as well. So they may feel like people are a bit microaggressive in terms of their intelligence. They may feel like they're not represented very well within the business, within the company, and they might feel like they've got some pressure to succeed from their families. So this person's thought process is very much, I can't afford to relax. Any mistake will ruin everything. They don't feel like they have the luxury of just being relieved for a long period of time. What to look out for in yourself and what to look out for in others is that this person is physically and emotionally exhausted. Like, they're always yawning, they're tired, they don't seem to be concentrating when they're talking to you, they just seem to be really stressed all the time. They have rigid rituals or superstitions as well, so they may need to do certain things at certain times. They're quite rigid with how they work. Now, as a reflection, what I've said is that I've seen this work style a lot, and I've also been this work style, and this work style gets applauded the most at work. When you are giving every part of yourself to a job to the point where you are emotionally and physically exhausted, managers just tend to love it. The business tend to love it, and they seem to see that as really good work ethic. This person is passionate, this person is a high performer. But if we're looking at the individual and not looking at how the business is doing really well because of them, if we're looking at that individual, how long can they do this? How long can they go on like this until they burn out? If this person is intense and they're full of anxiety and fear, and that relief doesn't stay very long with them, how sustainable is it? And this is something that we need to question. Instead of praise blindly, I think we need to question it. Is this person okay? Because they're going to burn out. Now, the next persona is called River. She has a conflicting style to her work. Her thoughts and her behaviours do not match. This person is really confusing. Their limiting belief is that any success in their tasks is due to luck, likability, the task being too easy, excessive hard work, rather than just pure talent. They think, I've had to work really hard and that's why I've got here, or maybe it was a bit too easy, or maybe I was at the right place at the right time. They contribute their success to their faith, and their thought process might be that they're just successful because they're lucky. They just don't believe or see any talent within themselves. So what to look out for in yourself and in others: denying and tossing away success. When you've achieved something that others are praising you for, if you're like, oh no, it's all right, just luck, or I was in the right place, or I met this person, they introduced me to so and so, and so and so got me here. If you're that sort of person and you just don't accept the fact that you've done a good job and actually you're very talented, then that's something to look out for in terms of, are you experiencing imposter syndrome? Are you suffering with imposter syndrome? What they think of themselves, and this is really important, what they think of themselves versus what people see is not aligned. So this is where they get really confusing because you're seeing them do all these amazing things, and it seems like they kind of know that they're doing all these amazing things. But then when you talk to them, they're just so humble to the point where they're just like not accepting the compliment at all. It's really confusing because you're watching how they operate and you're thinking, gosh, this person must know that they're doing really well, but they don't. And this is where the confusion can really occur with those around them. So in terms of reflection, this person might be seen as humble. They might confuse their colleagues as their actions and words don't match. People might think that they're just saying it and to ignore any doubt as they're a high performer. So, you might think, well, yeah, they're just being humble. They're just saying that it was luck, but they must know that they're really good. But I suppose if you're seeing this kind of behaviour, it's good to note that actually, if they're really good at what they do, but they're not letting the compliments sit, is something else going on there? Are they suffering with imposter syndrome? Because if we do a good job as humans, we have a right to be able to enjoy the success of the job that we've completed. So if we're not, then there's something deeper going on there. Now, the last persona is called Quinn. Quinn is a little similar to Tariq, but not as physically exhausted and emotionally exhausted. Quinn is more of a person that follows a repeated pattern and action. This person will not budge. This is the stubborn person that you're working with, what's called difficult person, the difficult to work with. Their cycle of repeated patterns is based on past experiences, personal beliefs, relationships with others, and their work environment. So they might have like 10 years of experience of doing a certain task a certain way. And that 10 years of experience is something that they hold on to dearly. And if someone new comes along that hasn't got as much work experience as them and finds a new way of doing it, they'll struggle to change. Like, for example, now AI is going to be taking over in the workplace. This person has 10 years potentially worth of experience in doing it a certain way, and it's going to be very hard for them to think differently. Their limiting belief is that they need to be rigid. I need to do it exactly like how I've done it, otherwise I will fail. They really struggle to get out of their comfort zone. Their thought process is, I need to work hard because that's how I've succeeded in the past. They have certain mechanisms in place because that's what's led them to succeed. And if they deviate, they could fail. They also believe that if they work harder than others, they'll stay ahead. So this person really believes that they need to outwork people, otherwise they'll fail. So what to look out for in this kind of persona? So this person may be a lack of belonging because they're so rigid. They may feel like they don't fit in. They're not as flexible as others. Their friends, their family, their peers, they all seem a little bit more relaxed. This person isn't relaxed. So a lack of belonging. Maybe they sit by themselves, or they spend a bit of time away from others, and they could struggle to fit in. So my reflections on this person is that they may come across as difficult. They may come across as uncompromising. They may come across like they're not a team player. They may come across like they just want to do things their own way. It's their way or the highway. But can we see past the way that they're presenting themselves? What happens if they do something differently? Do you feel like they're panicking? Do you feel like it causes a lot of distress? What is going on there? Because it's not like there are difficult people out there that just want to be difficult, and they can easily do something different, but they just think, you know what, I'm not going to do it because I just don't want to do it. I just want to be difficult. Those are difficult people. But somebody that is clinging onto a certain system or a certain way of doing things and they cannot deviate, I wouldn't say that was a difficult person. I would say that's somebody that is suffering maybe from other things, but in what we're looking at today in terms of imposter syndrome, there's definitely something there within that. Now, you've seen the personas, I've talked you through them all. If you're watching the pre-recorded version, you can always go back and look at them again. But what I would like you to do is complete a 3 to 5 minute exercise to really note down on a piece of paper, how would you manage or support a team member who fits into one of these profiles? What would you do to support one of these personas? What would you do? So if you can note that down in the next 3 to 5 minutes, I'll leave this up on the screen so you can have a look at each persona and maybe just make some notes on how you can help them. Now you have done that, I suppose the purpose of that task really is to look at your list of how you would help them. If you feel like you resonate with any of these personas, you have now written a list of what you would do as a person to help them. So you've looked at it objectively, you've looked at it from the viewpoint of helping someone else. If you fit into the persona and you feel like you fit into the persona that you've written about, have a look at the list of how you would help and see if you can find an opportunity to do something like that for yourself. So if you are like Devon and you're always putting your hand up for a really challenging task, and then you predict failure straight away, and then you might avoid the task or do it whilst fighting yourself inside. However you would help a person like that, apply it to yourself. I think that would be a really good start for you to start making some change in terms of how you can cope with imposter syndrome within yourself. So now we're going into what to do about it. So at this point, you know what imposter syndrome is, you know how it impacts, you know who it impacts, you know what it looks like. So right now I'm expecting you to be half crying and half laughing because yeah, you're probably feeling relieved that there is a definition for what you're going through. But then it's like, well, what do I do with all this that I now have learned? So what I'd like you to do, not just yet though, but we'll go through it, is a practical exercise, which is what imposter syndrome means for you and what you're going to do about it. So what I'd like you to do shortly, not just yet, is look at the profiles again and look at one area of imposter syndrome. And I know you've written your list as well, so you could even use that list. Look at one area of imposter syndrome that you would like to change. And then look at one step in the opposite direction. So whatever you've got, if it's I drop my self-care routine, what is the opposite of that? Which is taking care of your self-care routine. But if it's I don't shower during busy periods of work when I'm working from home, I would rather jump on my laptop rather than have a shower, that's you dropping your self-care routine. What's the opposite of that? Which would be, no matter how busy it is, I'm going to make sure I have a shower this week, no matter how stressful it is. So what is one thing you can do in the opposite direction? I've put two examples. So if you resonate with Zora and you struggle to get out of your comfort zone, what can you do? Like, can you do something small that's out of your comfort zone this week? If you resonate with Noah and you drop your self-care routine. What are you going to do? What can you do? What does that dropping of your self-care routine look like? And what can you do that's opposite to that? But before we make a note of this, I want to give you a bit more background and a bit more science. So why is what I'm asking you important? Like, why should you do that? Why should you practice it this week? And it's because what we focus on and what we practice daily, it shapes and evolves our brain and it becomes a habit. So what we focus on and practice, what we do every day, it shapes and evolves our brain and that then becomes a habit. So the science, new science now behind this, back in the day we used to think that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but now science is showing that we can. And there's a lot of evidence that shows the brain is able to change and adapt throughout life by forming new connections and by reorganizing itself, allowing us to learn, remember, and recover from injuries. And this term is called neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is basically research and science that is showing that the brain loves to learn, and the more you challenge it, the more you shape it. So if you're struggling with imposter syndrome right now, there is opportunities for your brain to change and adapt and reorganize itself and learn and remember. But you have to challenge it for it to do that. So what is neuroplasticity? Like, what are the examples of it? So for example, we'll look at two extremes. A person that's had a stroke. I know two people that have had a stroke. So if we look at people that have had a stroke, after they've had that, parts of their brain is damaged, especially the motor cortex, which is responsible for control, planning, organisation. Now, You would think that because they've had the stroke and parts of their brain is damaged, then that's just the way it's going to be. But these patients over time can relearn how to walk and they can relearn how to speak through physical and speech therapy. I actually know a speech therapist that teaches people how to speak after cancer, especially cancer in the throat. If it's disturbed any kind of speech there, then these speech therapists full time will work on teaching these individuals how to speak. So you would think that something bad has happened to them, then that's the way that they are forever. But actually, no, they can learn to walk, they can learn to speak again. If we look at this example as well, which is quite an interesting one that I don't relate to, but I just thought it was really interesting. It's the phantom limb sensation. So apparently, amputees sometimes feel sensations from their missing limbs. If you've been using your arm for the past 20, 30 years, and then heaven forbid something happens to your arm, your brain is so used to moving that arm, it will still think the arm is there because it's so used to that habit of moving your arm in a certain way. It takes a long time for your brain to catch up because it's so used, it's evolved, and it's been learning and evolving in using your right arm. But what is really interesting here is that sometimes nearby sensory areas can take over. So, for example, if a person that's been amputated touches their cheek, they may feel that in the missing arm. So it then kind of starts mapping out nearby sensory areas, which I think is really interesting. So this just shows the power of the brain. And then over time, maybe it then realizes through learning and evolving that actually your arm has been amputated and that there isn't sensation there. So these two are extreme examples, but for me, it just brings back home that if somebody that's had a stroke or somebody that's been amputated, if they can learn to speak and walk again, if they can still use part of their limbs, and then over time their body learns that the limbs are not there, if that can all happen at such an extreme level, why can't it happen for you in terms of your imposter syndrome? If people are learning to walk again, why can't you learn to deal with imposter syndrome and overcome it? I suppose is the moral of the story here. So when we look at neuroplasticity, what is shaping it? So to start off with, it's really simple. It's a conscious thought. It's making a decision. So when you wrote your list today of all the different ways that you can help somebody that is one of those personas, that is a conscious thought. You've consciously put some effort into thinking about how you can help that person. And then when you thought about, well, actually, if I'm that person, well, what's one thing out of this list that I could do to help myself? That's a conscious thought right there. That's the start of your journey to change. It's what you pay attention to. So if you're constantly paying attention to the symptoms of imposter syndrome, not how to cure the imposter syndrome, then you're always going to be feeling the symptoms of the imposter syndrome. But if you pay attention to changing the imposter syndrome symptoms that you're feeling, chances are you're more likely to overcome it. It's what you think, feel, and want. So, for example, we've all been here where we've liked someone romantically that probably isn't good for us, but you can't stop thinking about them. You feel like you want to be around them and you want to be with them. And then what happens? You make a mistake. So what you think, feel, and want, what the body feels and what the brain thinks and wants tends to happen. If you think, feel, and want one step in the other direction of imposter syndrome, and you really believe that that's what you want to do, and you really try and practice it every week, chances are your brain will start changing and evolving. It's how you react and how you behave as well. So if you are reacting to life with an open heart, chances are good things will happen. If you're reacting to life with a closed heart, chances are things will still be closed for you. Things won't open up for you. So the more you reinforce and repeat the same thought, the same feeling, the same experience, the stronger those neural connections in your brain become. The more you think negative, the more you feel a certain way, the more you drop your self-care, the more you put your hand up for challenging tasks and then fight yourself after, stronger these connections are going to become. Every time we learn something new, our conscious mind we use our conscious mind in a different way and we change our own brain. So every time you pick up something new and you learn something new, you're using your conscious mind and you're changing your brain. So examples of this are London taxi drivers. So they have to memorize maps, they understand different driving routes and know how to get to places quicker. They tend to, in brain scans, have a larger region for spatial memories. So they're the sort of people you want to go on holiday with because they will be able to figure out the area very quickly and figure out the best ways to get around really quickly compared to the average. Now, regular meditators like myself, I meditate every day. We have a smaller amygdala, which is the part of the emotional brain. So that means that we can deal with stress a lot easier. I could deal with stress a lot more easier than a person that's never meditated before. My amygdala in a brain scan is probably a lot more smaller than a person that has never meditated before. So whatever you may find is stressful, I might not find as stressful just purely from meditating, not from being superhuman, just purely from meditating. So if we go into meditation a little bit more with a microscope, and we can apply this to imposter syndrome. So you don't just get up one day and meditate every day. It doesn't tend to happen like that. So you create small connections in the brain, small neuro pathways in the brain. So one of the days I might say, you know what, I'm going to try meditating in the morning. And this is what I've done. So I've said, okay, I'm going to stop meditating in the morning. Don't like that. Okay, I'm going to try in the evening. Okay, maybe morning's a bit better for me. Then I stick to the morning. Then I think, okay, I need a bit more encouragement. So I'll read a book on meditation so I can really understand the theory behind meditation. Then I might listen to some YouTube videos on meditation, how to meditate and the best way to get into it. And all these various different steps creating and strengthening networks in my brain. And they're helping me get into the groove of becoming a meditator. So if I keep practicing and trying various different steps to meditate, sooner rather than later, my body's going to surrender and I will just become a person that meditates and it will just become a habit, which it is now. It's just a habit, but it takes that effort over a period of time. So how do we apply this to the task that I've given you? I suppose what I'm asking you to do is look at one area of imposter syndrome that you'd like to change and just one step. So in here, you can see that I've taken 3 or 4 different steps to get into meditating. What's one way that you could do it? What's one first step that you could do, bearing in mind that your body may fight you on this because it's so used to doing things a certain way, it's going to fight you on this. So what's one little thing that you can implement today, tomorrow, this week that you can do that is in the opposite direction to imposter syndrome? And the more steps you incorporate, the more likely you are for it to become a habit. So if I can give you 5 minutes or so to look at one area of imposter syndrome and then one step. So you can use the list that you created before, or you can do this again if you want to look at a new step, a new area that resonates a bit more to you. And then start looking at, well, what's one thing? So for example, like I mentioned before, if you're the sort of person that doesn't shower when things are really busy and you prefer to be in front of your desk just working, could you incorporate showering before you work just to take care of yourself? If you're the sort of person that drops your self-care routine and doesn't eat lunch, could you eat lunch this week? Is that one thing you could do? And could you create a habit out of that? This isn't going to cure imposter syndrome completely in like a week, because chances are you've been experiencing imposter syndrome for years. That's typically what happens. But if you can start moving today in the opposite direction and you can start eating lunch instead of working through lunch, you can start showering instead of not doing that and jumping straight on your laptop, you'll start opening up to other things and other possibilities where you'll just be that person that showers in the morning before they work, no matter how stressful it is. You'll eat your lunch no matter how stressful it is. You'll leave work at a certain time no matter how stressful it is, and you'll learn to cope and manage. The imposter syndrome won't get the better of you. So if you can think of one thing now over the next 5 minutes, and if you're watching the pre-recorded version, please pause and take some time, and then we will come back to the next bit. You've now got one step that you could do today in the opposite direction to imposter syndrome. Now, your brain is used to a certain way of doing things. So if that's not eating lunch and working through, your brain is in autopilot and it will just work through. So there are things that you can do to disturb your subconscious mind, which is very much in power right now. 97% of what we do is subconscious. We don't have control over it. Our body just does it better than the mind. About 3 to 5% of what we do is conscious thought. So an example of that is telling myself I'm amazing until I'm blue in the face, but still not feeling amazing. You can tell yourself that you're amazing, but your body won't feel amazing because your energy isn't amazing and you behave in a way that isn't amazing. So what we need to do is we need to disturb the subconscious mind and we need to get it to wake up and to redirect quickly. Now, a tactic that I give clients as a coach is to click, clap, cease. So click your fingers, clap, and then stop the thought. So the minute I think, oh God, it's 12 o'clock, it's really busy. I don't think I'm going to be able to eat lunch today. Let's eat it later. Click, clap, stop that thought, redirect, which is optional. So what I tend to do with clients is say prompt to a new thought, a new action. So it could just be click, clap, cease. Okay, stop that thinking, Monica. Prompt it to a new thought or a new action, which is I'm going to get up and I'm just going to walk towards the kitchen just to see if there's something in there that I can eat. Whatever that prompt is for you. And this is where that one step that you've put down, one step that you could do this week, maybe click your fingers, clap your hands, cease the thought, and then do that one step just to disturb your subconscious a little bit, just to get you out of that autopilot. Mel Robbins has a 5-second rule, which I've added in here. So what she suggests is you count backwards. So you say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you act. So the minute a thought comes in and you say, oh, you know what, today's a busy day, I'm not going to have a shower, I just need to get onto the laptop and get my work done. You just count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, act, and you jump in the shower. So these little things can help you just shake things up a little bit and can help you move in the right direction. So there's a little top tip for you of something you can do on top of that one step to help you if you do struggle. Now we're coming to the end of this workshop. So what I would like you to take away from this is 3 things. One is look at your habits when it comes to how you approach work. Feel free to use the personas. You will have this recorded version. So look at your habits when it comes to your approach to work. Find small, comfortable, and even enjoyable. I think it's really important for it to be enjoyable as well, because when things are enjoyable, we tend to just take them on as a habit a lot quicker. So find something that's small, comfortable, enjoyable, but in the opposite direction to your current habits. And disturb your subconscious brain. So click, clap, cease, and the countdown can really help you disturb that subconscious when you fall back into your old thoughts and behaviors, because you will fall back into your old thoughts and behaviors. It's part of just the human experience. If you've been doing something a certain way for several years, it's likely that you're going to struggle to just stop that straight away. So disturb that subconscious mind when you feel like you need to. So those are the 3 things that I'd like you to take away from today. I'd like you to start looking at your habits. I'd like you to start focusing on small things that you can change, and use those 2 tools that I've given you to disturb that subconscious mind when you fall back into your old thought behaviors. I have got some referencing from the articles and the research papers and the books that I've read to present the work to you today. So you've got the referencing here as well. If you want to do your own reading, you can do so with this referencing. But it has been a pleasure talking you through everything today. It's been a pleasure giving you space to just explore some of the exercises and to start making a difference. So I hope it goes well for you. Trial it out this week. And definitely comment as well on the pre-recorded version how it's gone for you. I'd really like to hear your thoughts and whether this has helped you. But bye for now.